Look at your phone right now. Think about electric cars on the road, military jets flying overhead, wind turbines generating power. They all share one thing in common. They all depend on 17 special metals that most people don't even know exist. We call them rare earth metals. And here's the crazy part. China controls 80% of the world's supply. Not just some of it, 80%. Today, we're diving into how China pulled off this takeover, why it's a bigger deal than you think, and whether anyone can break free. This is about the most important resource you have never heard of. But before we jump in, let's clear something up right away. Rare earth metals aren't actually rare. They are all over the place in the Earth's crust. The name is kind of misleading. We're talking about 17 specific metals with weird names like neodymium, dysprosium, and europium. Names that you have probably never heard before. So what makes them special? It's all about what they can do. These metals are incredibly magnetic. They conduct electricity like champions. And most importantly, they make the strongest magnets humans have ever discovered. In today's tech world, that makes them impossible to replace. Take the smartphone in your pocket. Inside that little device, you've got at least 8 different rare earth metals working together. Neodymium makes your speaker work. Lanthanum helps your camera take better photos. And europium creates the red color on your screen. Without these metals, your phone is basically just a brick, non-functioning. But phones are just the beginning. Electric cars need about 2 kilograms of these rare earth magnets to run. One wind turbine uses over half a ton of neodymium just to spin efficiently. And here is where things gets really interesting. Military technology runs on rare earths. Every F-35 fighter jet has over 400 kilograms of rare earths inside. Guided missiles need them for navigation. Night vision goggles can't walk without them. Satellites, radar, laser systems, all of them need rare earths to function, and there is no way around it. The global market for rare earths is worth about $12 billion a year. That sounds pretty small compared to oil or computer chips. But here is the thing. You can't measure rare earths by money alone. You measure them by how critical they are. You can replace oil with solar power. You can use older computer chips if you have to. But there's literally no substitute for rare earths. None. Zero replacement. This brings us to the biggest question. How did China end up controlling 80% of something this crucial? The story starts in the 1980s. Back then, America dominated rare earth production. California had this huge mine called Mountain Pass. It supplied most of the world with rare earths. Australia, India, and Brazil had a smaller operation. But China barely mattered in this market then. Then in 1992, China's leader Deng Xiaoping said something that changed everything. He said,
"The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths."
This wasn't just a talk, it was a game plan. China saw what Western countries missed: control rare earths and control the future. China's strategy was simple but genius. They dropped prices through the floor. Chinese companies could lose money selling rare earths, but the government backed them with unlimited funds. American and Australian companies couldn't compete with that. They were businesses trying to make a profit, while China was playing the long game. One by one, competitors shut down. Mountain Pass, America's biggest mine, closed in 2002. Not because it ran out of rare earths, it closed because it couldn't match Chinese prices. Australia's main company almost went bankrupt, and other countries just gave up completely. But China didn't stop at cheap prices. They built the entire system from top to bottom. Mining rare earth is only step one. You have to separate them, clean them, and turn them into usable material. This process is hard, it's messy, and it takes serious know-how. China spent 30 years building that know-how. They built processing plants, they trained thousands of engineers, they figured out techniques that nobody else knew. Today, China doesn't just mine 80% of rare earths, they process 90% of the world's supply. Even if you mine rare earths somewhere else, you'll probably ship them to China to get processed. Here's where it gets messy. Literally, rare earth mining is a dirty work. You use toxic chemicals, you create radioactive waste, you pollute water. Western countries have strict environmental laws. The public doesn't want toxic mines in their backyard, while China had fewer restrictions and more government control. they were willing to pay the environmental price. By the early 2000s, China had what military experts call a choke point. One point of control over something everyone needs. And China knew exactly how powerful that made them. China's control isn't just about selling rare earths, it's about having power. And they have proven they will use it while tension rises. The big moment came in 2010. Japan arrested a Chinese fishing boat captain near some disputed islands. China's response was brutal. They stopped shipping rare earths to Japan. No announcement, no official ban. The shipments just stopped. Japan freaked out. Toyota's hybrid car production almost shut down. Panasonic couldn't get materials for batteries. The Japanese government had to negotiate behind closed doors. Within weeks, they released the captain. Message received. China's rare earth control is a real weapon. That incident woke everyone up. America, Europe, and Japan complained to the World Trade Organization. They accused China of playing politics with exports. China denied it, but the truth was obvious. The world suddenly realized they had a serious problem. Here's what makes it even worse. China isn't just world's supplier, they are also the world's biggest customer. Chinese companies use 70% of all rare earths mined globally. They control both ends. They mine it, process it, and use most of it themselves. China also has export quotas. Officially, these protect the environment, but they also mean China decides how much leaves the country. During political tensions, those quotas get tighter. Funny how that works. For Western militaries, this is a nightmare. The US Department of Defense put out a report in 2022. It basically said America's weapons depend on Chinese supply chains. If war broke out with China, America couldn't build the weapons it needs. Think about that. The world's most powerful military depends on its biggest rival for critical materials. That's not just ironic, that's dangerous. China's rare earth dominance comes at a huge environmental cost, and the rest of the world has basically outsourced that pollution to China. There's a city in China called Baotou. It's the rare earth capital of the world. Next to it sits this massive artificial lake. But it's not water, it's toxic waste from processing rare earths. This lake covers 10 square kilometers. It's filled with radioactive thorium, heavy metals, and chemical poison. People living nearby report higher cancer rates. The farmland around it can't grow food anymore. The groundwater is contaminated. This is the real price of rare earths. This is what the world doesn't see when they buy their iPhones and Teslas. Western countries love to criticize China's environmental record. But here's the truth. We enjoy clean technology while China deals with the toxic mess. We want electric cars and wind turbines, but we don't want the pollution that comes with making them possible. That's pretty hypocritical when you think about it. China is starting to clean things up. They have passed new environmental laws. Some old toxic facilities have shut down, but the basic problem remains. Rare earth production is dirty. Someone has to accept that pollution. For 30 years, China accepted what others refused. Economically, this strategy has paid off big time for China. By controlling the rare materials, they also dominate the industries that use them. Chinese electric car makers always have magnets for their motors. Chinese wind turbine companies never run out of supplies. This gives them a massive advantage over foreign competitors. China also controls pricing. When demand goes up, they raise prices because customers have nowhere else to go. Between 2010 and 2011, some rare earth prices shot up 600%. Chinese companies made huge profits. Foreign companies had to eat the costs. But China isn't just exploiting their position, they are also innovating. Chinese scientists have developed better ways to process rare earths. They have figured out how to mine deposits that others couldn't use. They have created recycling methods to extract rare earths from old electronics. They are not just ahead in supply, they are ahead in technology too. So here is the critical question. Can the West break free from China's rare earth control? The honest answer: maybe, but it won't be easy, fast, or cheap. Several countries are trying to rebuild their rare earth industries. America reopened the Mountain Pass mine in California in 2020. Australia's Lynas corporation is expanding with government help. Canada approved new rare earth projects. The European Union called rare earths critical materials and promised funding. But here is the problem. Mining is only part of the battle. Even if you mine rare earths at home, you need processing facilities. Those decades when the West abandoned rare earths processing can't be fixed overnight. Building new facilities costs billions. It takes years. You need to train people from scratch. Look at Lynas Corporation. They mine in Australia, but they had to build their processing plant in Malaysia because Australia's environmental laws made it too hard at home. Even that took years of fighting regulators and needed government money. That's the reality everyone faces. The US military is investing in American processing facilities. The goal is making sure weapons production doesn't depend on China. But these facilities won't be ready until the end of 2026 at the earliest. And even then, they will only produce a fraction of what America needs. Some people talk about recycling. Old phones and computers have rare earths in them. If we could extract those, we would need less mining. Japan has made progress on this as well. But recycling provides less than 1% of global supply right now. Scaling that up would take massive investment and cooperation. Scientists are also looking for alternatives. For some uses, they have found materials that need fewer rare earths. But for strong magnets, nothing works as well. Research continues, but breakthroughs are uncertain and years away. Here is the fundamental problem. China didn't just build mines, they built an entire system. The expertise, the factories, the supply chains, the trained workers, and the institutional knowledge. Copying all of that takes more than money. It takes time, lots of time. Western countries are realistically 10 years away from rare earth independence, and that's optimistic. Meanwhile, China keeps moving forward. They are investing in rare earth mines in Africa, South America, and Central Asia. Through Belt and Road projects, they are locking up global supplies. They are also moving up the value chain. Instead of just exporting raw materials, they are making finished products. The timing makes this worse. As the world goes green, rare earth demand will explode. Wind turbines, solar panels, electric cars, they all need rare earths. The International Energy Agency says demand could quadruple by 2040. China's 80% control will matter even more. Western governments face a tough choice. They want independence and secure supply chains. But they also want cheap electronics, affordable electric cars, and fast green energy transitions. You might not be able to have both. Breaking free from China might mean higher prices, slower progress, and environmental costs that voters won't accept. China's control of rare earths is one of the smartest resource strategies in modern history. Through patient planning, environmental sacrifice, and long-term thinking, they lock down the materials that power modern technology. This isn't just about mining rocks. It's about who controls technology, who has economic leverage, and who has geopolitical power. Every electric car, every smartphone, every wind turbine connects the global economy to Chinese supply chains. Those connections add up to serious dependence. The question isn't whether Western countries should reduce this dependence. Obviously they should, and they are trying. The real question is whether they can do it fast enough, cheap enough, and big enough to actually matter. Right now, the answer isn't clear. What is clear? Rare earths will be critical for decades, and China's head start might be impossible to beat. Sometimes the most important battles aren't about artificial intelligence or computer chips. Sometimes they are about 17 weird metals nobody's heard of. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to FactoPX for more analysis of the forces reshaping our world. What do you think? Can the West break free, or is China's advantage permanent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like and share this video. We will see you in our next amazing analysis video. Until then, stay curious and stay with FactoPX.